Does Stein have to prove all three acts as Rains is suggesting?
No, I think that Rains actually didn't get that law precisely right. The prosecution doesn't have to prove all three crimes. They're in the alternative. It's either murder, or it's voluntary manslaughter, or it's involuntary manslaughter, or maybe it's an acquittal.
Why would he present that argument in front of the jury? It confused me a little bit.
Well, I think the defense maybe wants the jury to think that there's this enormous burden on the prosecution, a big hill that they have to climb. And getting the jurors to say, well, we couldn't find one aspect of one crime, we better let him go altogether. That would work to the defense benefit.
Now, Rains' argument in terms of trying to break down the prosecutions is believing that the defendant was pulling out a taser. If you don't believe that he wasn't trying to pull out the taser, does that kind of weaken almost his entire argument?
Right. I think the defense has put a lot on this argument that it was a mistake, he meant to pull the taser. Because if the jury doesn't believe that, I think that the jury would be willing to go the full length for the prosecution's theory and maybe even come back with a murder conviction. It's really the tale of two different shootings if you listen to both sides. Prosecutors saying he meant to use the gun, he was hyped up with the other police, and he came up with this lame excuse afterwards of self-defense. And the defense saying, nuh-uh, he meant to pull a taser, accidentally pulled the gun, that's not a crime.
Now, Rains said don't rely so much on some of the words that were stated by the defendant. If it wasn't written or if it wasn't audio, don't make much. But Stein has been making a big deal that he has not said to anyone that it was an accident. And obviously this accident story came much later, maybe days or even weeks. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, one of the things that prosecutors rely on is the argument to the jury that the defense molds their defense after they see what the prosecution's case is. And that's what they're saying is happening here. If you go back to Mehserle's comments at the time of the event, it didn't really talk about, oh my God, I accidentally pulled my taser. He wasn't saying that. He wasn't acting consistent with that defense. And so they're saying that that was made up after the fact, either by him or his lawyers.
Now, if he's convicted of second degree, that's 15 years, and then there's a gun enhancement that's 25. The maximum is 40. What's the probability that a former police officer would get sentenced to 40 years in prison?
If he gets convicted on the murder with the enhancement, I think that Judge Perry's going to give what the law requires. It will be an extraordinary situation. We do not see this happening in America. But will Judge Perry do what the law calls for? Undoubtedly.